it all started while we were pulling into the alleyway behind my cousin Chris's house on our second trip to North Dakota. We had gone up there 4 years earlier, and in that first trip, we only had Ambrose and Vigo. I just started at Northwestern Mutual, and we were camping with my cousin Josh at Cross Ranch State Park, which is right on the Missouri River. It was our first camping trip as a family. We were tent camping. Ann hadn't really kind of done that type of thing very much in the past. My cousin Josh was a ranger at the state park, which was right across the street from the place where my cousin Chris worked, helping manage a buffalo herd. So it was this ideal situation. We went over there, we camped for an entire week in August. It was beautiful weather, rained some nights, but it didn't rain during the day. We spent time on the Missouri River. We went to Theodore Roosevelt National Park. It was a great trip, so good that 4 years later we wanted to go again. This time Chris was living in town. Josh had moved on to Montana, so we were gonna stay with Chris at his house. And his house has an alleyway behind it. We think the car may have bottomed out as we pulled into the alleyway outside his house. Not sure. The car didn't fall apart after we pulled into the alleyway. We were driving at that point my brother and my mom's old red Saturn. It was a year older than our car, which was the blue Saturn we bought the year after my mom bought hers. Our blue Saturn had 150,000 more miles on it than the red one. So the red one was our good car. They were identical, just different colors, one model year difference. That's the one we took out to North Dakota. So we get out to North Dakota. It was a good trip. We went all over the place. We went out to Theodore Roosevelt National Park this time. This time when we drove out, it was so different than it was in 2007. There was water trucks and oil installations. I mean, fracking had taken total hold of North Dakota once you got into the shale fields. And it was a really good trip. We got pulled over by the police, which we talked about in a different episode. And on the way back from Theodore Roosevelt, our car started getting louder and louder, and we're like, this is not good. So after several days in North Dakota, we spent at his house. That's when we met Karen. It was great. We're very excited about Chris and Karen getting married this summer or this fall. That's going to be our third trip to North Dakota. Hopefully it will end better than this one. So we have a loud car. We pull it into Washburn. We go to a mechanic that there's only one or two in town. Chris tells us to go to, and he's like, well, here's the problem. He's like, here's what you got going on. I can get a used part, but it'll probably take 3-4 days to get here. And when it gets here, I can't give priority to you. I got to give priority to these combines and other things that are being used for harvest, because harvest is coming up, and I can't, just let you guys go. So it's going to cost you a couple $1,000s. And yeah, that's what you're going to have to do. So we're like, oh, man, we were going to go back to Minnesota, spend a couple days there, visit my grandma and my aunt, and we really didn't want to spend another week in North Dakota, possibly spend thousands of dollars. And really, at the end of the day, we didn't even know how long we'd be there. So we had to make the decision to leave our car in North Dakota. We were going to scrap the car. Before we do that, we call Dave Larrabee. Just say, hey, this is what the mechanic says. Do you think he's crazy? No, I think he's right. So we're gonna leave the car here, and we're just gonna have to drive to Bismarck and buy a new car. That did not go over well with Dave. Oh no, don't do that. This is what Dave said. You know what? I can get a flatbed and drive it up to North Dakota from Racine, and that way we can bring your car back on the flatbed. I'm like, no, you're not gonna spend 2-3 days driving the car flatbed just so we can drive it. That's not a good idea. Oh no, we can't just leave the car there. And I'm like, well, why not? He's like, because it's the same as your other car. You can use it for spare parts. And I'm like, the money we would save on parts for fixing our other car, we're gonna waste on trying to transport the thing hundreds of miles back to Wisconsin. It was crazy. And so he just couldn't possibly conceive that we would just bail on the car and not bring it with us back to Wisconsin. But that's what we had to do. We ultimately, we made it into Bismarck. Went to a Toyota dealer, which was awful. Then went to a Nissan dealer. We found the car, that one right there. Found it on the lot. It was a stripped down version. It didn't even have a radio. That's right. No, not even. If you don't have a radio, you don't have a clock. Nothing. In 2011, when we had this, we didn't have a cell phone. So when we bought that car in Bismarck, we bought it and we're driving back to Wisconsin, and we had no idea what time it was. Never really think about that, but we didn't have a radio in the car. We didn't have a clock on the car. We're just kind of going. We find out on the way back to Minnesota, my grandma, who was staying in Minnesota, she passed away. And so then we ended up spending another week in Minnesota for a funeral, which we were planning on being in Minnesota. It worked out quite well. It would not have worked out well if we had a red Saturn on a flatbed behind Dave's truck. That one back over there on my left shoulder on your right side. If we would have had a Saturn on a flatbed while we were trying to go to my grandma's funeral, everyone's coming together in Minnesota. It worked out pretty well. That car right there has got just almost at 100,000 miles. It may not catch up to the 295 that the blue Saturn ultimately had, but it's been a faithful car.